There's something wrong with the world. And that it's her fault.
So, fellow hosts, we finally got the official trailer for Westworld Season 4, so let's take a stab at trying to break this trailer down and what the heck is going on in all of this new footage that we got compared to that of the teaser we got a little while ago now. But if you're looking for a bit of a refresher, speaking of that teaser, I have done a breakdown on that, but as well as a Season 3 recap, so I do recommend checking that out if you want to kind of like get back into everything. But let's get right into this. So Season 4 is being described as, and I quote, a dark odyssey about the fate of sentient life on Earth. And as usual with this trailer, things are very trippy, so I encourage you to leave your theories down in the comments. I mean, most of us probably won't be on the ball as much as we like to think we might be. Westworld, as usual, every year, we think maybe we're onto something, but it always subverts our expectations in some way or another. But from the get-go, we know we're in New York this season. We're also going to what could be an old New York or like an old Chicago-y gangster park. More on that in a little bit. But this moment could contribute to like a really big theory about somewhat of a new park that is being created by Dolores in the real world, and also a certain special character played by Evan Rachel Wood could be within her own narrative loop within it. Now, stay with me here. This is where the theories really already start to come in. But before I get too ahead of myself, we hear Evan Rachel Wood's new character talking. And yes, it's not Dolores that you hear at the beginning of the trailer. The character she is playing in Season 4 is named Christina. She talks about this story about a girl every single day she wakes up. The more she sees it, but nobody else can, that there's something wrong with the world and that it's her fault. And I found it interesting that they somewhat annotated that with kind of waking up in bed, because obviously that very pitch for her story does mirror what Dolores herself did every single day back in Westworld, waking up and whatnot. And I say pitch, you may be wondering why pitch? Why would Christina, this new character, pitch that story? And that is because she is a writer. So it's likely that what she was saying there was potentially an office meeting about a story that she heavily resonates with, because as you can kind of tell, the things that she's even experiencing herself are out of place in this world. Now, I'm sure with Christina, Evan Rachel Wood's new character, there's gonna be tons of theories like, you know, is she technically an old version of Dolores, perhaps a copy made of her long, long ago? Because of course, we cannot forget that Dolores, our Dolores that we've been following for those first few seasons, has died, with her memories quite literally being deleted. So the very thing that makes you a person, like if all of your memories were deleted, is gone, and thus she, well, as we know, she died at the end of last season. And even though Christina is in the same somewhat skin suit, that doesn't make her Dolores. This comes into one of the theories we're going to get into in this video, in that, yes, this is Christina. Yes, she's not Dolores, yet she could still be a baseline version with somewhat of the same makeup that makes Dolores Dolores, albeit without any of the memories. Before we continue the breakdown of the trailer, I wanted to chuck in some more additional information about Evan Rachel Wood's character. I thought you guys would appreciate that, because obviously she's been the lead of the show for the longest time now, and this gets into how she lives with her roommate in a city that looks like New York and is trying to make it as a writer. So she goes on to specifically say that she's a normal woman living in a big city just trying to make it as a writer. Nothing ever happens to her, really. I think that's all I can say. I was told that Dolores was meeting her rather tragic end in Season 3, so I had some convos with the co-creator Jonathan Nolan and Lisa at the time about what that meant. They said, yeah, you'll be back this season and you'll look a lot like Evan Rachel Wood, but I'm not me. And that's what I mean. She's not Dolores, but still, like, deep down, it could have been based off of the same, I don't know how else to say it, somewhat template, if you will. But that template still doesn't technically make you that same person. Now, in other very interesting news, it's also reported by Deadline that Christina, Evan Rachel Wood's new character, will go on to date a man of whom is James Marsden, also returning to Season 4. As we know, he played Teddy. So going back to the scenes we actually see over the narration of Christina, she's definitely noting that there's something off even about the world that she's in. So I wonder if a copy, again to entertain that theory of Dolores long ago, was maybe made even if at a very blank slate, hence her own personality of Christina, but perhaps with the same character traits and that somewhat makes up Dolores, hence, you know, again, referencing the template. But perhaps she was placed in the park to keep her off the radar, somewhat of maybe an intentional backup. But again, with James Marsden returning, it's highly likely that he won't be Teddy. Just how Evan Rachel Wood is not playing Dolores but Christina, it's making me think that perhaps there's multiple backups of hosts just with the same skin suits, just living alternative narratives. To kind of aid this even more, another thing that I feel, even though I don't think I'm going to be spot on, and we'll see that when the show comes out, but to aid this even more, is that even though Christina is a new character and not the same person as Dolores, the very fact that Christina is romantically involved with James Marsden's new character as well, I feel like that's somewhat of a testament to the fact that even though they're new characters, Christina, new narratives, they're still drawn to each other, thus somewhat bolstering, maybe, I don't know, the fact that despite new personalities and new characters, they still have the same baseline core value system there, that even though they have new memories, they're still somewhat similar. And hey, Christina somehow found James Marsden's new character, just like how Dolores always finds Teddy back in the day. This is where the trailer shows us the Charlotte Hale version of Dolores, of which, for the sake of ease, we call her Hale-Loris. And she, if you remember, differed from our Dolores, who we've been following for seasons, by giving into Dolores' darker side, if you remember. Again, check out my previous video for more details on that recap. And long story short, though, she is just kind of pretty hell-bent, and this trailer solidifies it more than ever, that instead of giving humanity another chance, you know, to see the beauty in the world, like our old Dolores did at the end of last season by getting rid of Rehoboam and offering humanity the ability to make decisions themselves, as Dolores says here, your kind made a sport out of hunting us. You controlled our every move, and now I'm going to do the same to you. We've seen in previous teasers that it's highly likely she's making like a host army. I mean, as you're seeing on screen right now, as in like tons of hosts we saw in the room at the end of last season. She's got like a boatload of them in progress. And I guess this is just theories. We're gonna have to wait and see, but potentially she's making like a ton of sleeper agents, if you will, in the real world, preparing for potentially a mass takeover to some extent. One thing's for sure, she's trying to, as she says there, evolve into the species that we were meant to become. Now, the narration that we just went over was also annotated over these scenes of seeing William in what looks like some sort of host building machine. It's like he's got the host fluid just being pumped in and out of him or whatever. The interesting thing about this is in the previous teaser for season 4 that we got, we actually see old man William in this scene kind of walking towards this same host version of himself, like, you know, pinned up here. So now that's making me think, guys, that it is possible, despite what happened to the real old man William at the end of last season, long story short, if you've kind of forgot, remember something happened to him with his throat, the host version of himself. It looks like he killed him, basically. It could be that for some reason he gets patched up despite the fatal looking wound. Maybe they do that kind of like welding treatment, if you will. And maybe here he's looking at a host version of himself being constructed. It's just in this trailer we get maybe an expanded version of what we were just looking at in the previous teaser. It's also totally possible that there's two old man William hosts as well, and that the real William does indeed die. But I don't know, I've just got a feeling that real old man William somehow, despite having his throat injured, to looking fatal that is, somehow made it out of that. Even though the real old man William, if you're still with me here, was hell-bent on like screwing over the hosts. That's why he marched into that building at the end of last season. He was like, yeah, I'm the savior, you know, they're breeding here. And then he goes down there and proceeds to get wrecked by his own host version of himself. Well, maybe, just maybe, he's getting talked round by Dolores and convinced of the idea of the next stage of humanity. I mean, we hear William saying, maybe it's time you question the nature of your own reality. We're not here to transcend, we're here to destroy. Now, to be honest, that's probably the host version of Old Man William saying that to the real Old Man William, if you're still with me here. But that's a very interesting conversation that could unfold, because for all intents and purposes, the host version of Old Man William, who tried to kill the real one at the end of last season, would still act kind of like the person he was designed after. And he came to terms with it, so maybe he's saying that to his real self. Now, I'm wondering if the next scene that we see with the flies going into this guy's eye and then it cuts to the car, I thought maybe he resembles Teddy, but I also have another theory that comes in towards the end of this video. Not Teddy, but, you know, the new character that James Marsden is playing. We also have Halloris looking over this red, somewhat cityscape that we saw in the previous teaser and what we were speculating about. And in that previous teaser, she shows William this location. Like, she's approaching it. You're probably seeing some footage of that on screen. I'm wondering if this is the park, or the park she's trying to create perhaps in the real world. If it's even a park that Evan Rachel Wood's new character Christina is in. Because we do have to rope in now that we also get a shot of Christina looking over this same red cityscape in this shot. It appears to potentially be in a different room, but it could also be Christina coming to terms with the nature of her own reality. Like, oh crap, I knew there was something off. I was even writing and pitching a story about a girl who knew something was off. And here I'm seeing some weird trippy, you know, cityscape. So this could be her breaking through the ice for the first time, like we've seen happen before with many, many hosts. And with the location of where this could be possibly being, as again, I keep referencing that first teaser we got at the very end of that trailer, we see that webbed-like tip of this building, and that very webbing not only resembles a bit of a fly situation getting caught in a spider's web, but also the very fabric that makes up a host, but again could speak larger to that of the flies and how Halloris is catching them and people in her web to build her next stage and plan for humanity. I think flies are going to be bigger than ever this season, as somewhat teased by even the hashtag on Twitter with the little icon being a fly. Flies being very prominent throughout this trailer. More on that a little bit later. We then see Bernard answering a question from someone asking, do you think you can save them? And he replies, I have seen a path. Now, we can't forget that Bernard uploaded himself to the Valley Beyond at the end of last season with the post-credits showing him waking up, or at least what we can assume to be quite some time later. I mean, to have like a whole coat of dust over the hotel room and wake up that much later just kind of implies that you've been there for quite some time. Now, to be fair, I want to chuck in the theory that he could have plugged himself back in, and then he wakes up at a much later time, and he wakes up before that post-credit scene we saw at the end of season 3, if you're still with me. But obviously, it is completely possible that we could see dual timelines again this season to some extent, showing Bernard a little bit later, having come out of that, like at the end of season 3's post-credit scene, and then continuing on and maybe having learned of this path to save what could not only be a reference to the people in the Valley Beyond, but maybe humanity, because he's aware that Dolores now was trying to save humanity, not destroy it, but there is a version of Dolores, Halloris, who is trying to destroy it. So the path could be, yes, a path to save humanity, and Bernard is the one who might walk that path. And with regards to the tiny theory of maybe it's speaking to saving the people in the Valley Beyond, I say that as well because we see a shot later of William looking at the entry to the Valley Beyond, which, you know, can't mean great news, I imagine. Also, you have to think that this is a host version of him, since you have to be a host to see the little frickin' tear gateway to the Valley Beyond. But also, more on that note, not to mention, it looks like the events of certain episodes will be leading up to this point, potentially, because this location, right towards the end of the trailer, we revisit it again. You can see the crack to the Valley Beyond in the distance, with Halloris in the same location shooting behind her. So it's like she's trying to do something. I don't know what her game is, because Halloris wants to kind of eradicate humanity, but I can't imagine eradicate hosts or those in the Valley Beyond, so I don't know why she'd be going there to, like, try and wreck it or whatever. So I'd love your expanded ideas on what this culminating point could be, in where she's literally like returning gunfire. I'm also just so excited for Aaron Paul again this season, because despite what people think about season 3, whether you loved it or disliked it, I do feel like he was such a good addition, and I think here we could possibly be seeing him in that park that the new Dolores / Christina, if you will, is in. Perhaps you could argue this is way too cliche to say he's gone there to retrieve her, but I'm not sure how he would have learned of her or why why he would want to get Christina, since it's technically not the same person as Dolores. No memories, so for all intents and purposes, it is, as we said, a new person. But I just wanted to chuck that out there. But wherever he is, and however he ends up here, everyone around him stops, and this clearly terrifies him to the point of where he must have thought all of these people were indeed real. And to try and keep the scenes connected, later on in the trailer, we also see Caleb in the same outfit with a bunch of flames behind him as he's struggling, so I'm not sure if he's trying to jump in wherever this hole leads, but it already seems really weirdly like flames are directly behind him, not like a while behind him, but like literally behind him. So to be honest, just like with a lot of the quicker shots at the end of this trailer, this one is pretty confusing. But no matter what, things obviously get up to a point for Caleb when he's in this getup, this attire, if you will, where he's looking absolutely devastated in this shot. And these scenes link up with him from the previous teaser getting away from one of the drone hosts, and it looks like we get a little bit of an expanded scene here, whereas in the previous teaser we see him literally like crawling on the floor, barely just able to get to that tool in time to take out the drone host. So I think this moment picks up afterwards where he's grabbed by the throat and he's already got the tool in hand and he's got to get out of that situation. Ultimately here, I'm kind of getting vibes that Caleb is perhaps going undercover into one of Halores's locations, maybe even like the HQ, like the webbed spear place that she could be running all of this out of. And he kind of gets found in the place where he shouldn't be, but he's found it all trippy because, as with our theories, maybe she's taking over people or like replacing real humans. So that's perhaps why he didn't expect all of those people to stop. Ultimately, it's just kind of like one never-ending nightmare for him in whatever undercover mission he goes through. And then up next, in some other news, we see Caleb and Maeve in this kind of new, old, New York-y, Chicago-esque looking gangster world, if you will, on some kind of mission, I'm sure. I can't wait to see these two in action. Obviously, the very ending shots of season 3 showed them on the bridge, kind of looking over the new apocalypse of the world. Now, this is where things ramp up insanely so in the trailer. Very quick shots, very dramatic music, where it kind of gets a bit disconnected. But it looks as though, in this scene here, there's some kind of other, like, perhaps prototype of Rehoboam. I'm not saying it like literally is like Saul or anything like that, but maybe some other kind of similar machinery where it's like really important to what maybe Halores is trying to do, because it looks like two characters are getting flung out of an explosion as that's being exploded. Obviously, trailers could cut that together to make it seem like they're to do with the same thing. But speaking of those two characters, it does look to be Maeve and Caleb. The man here, or Caleb, as we see, is being supported by the woman as he's hobbling along, wounded, and we did get a shot of that man trying to like put pressure on a wound. So possibly Maeve and Caleb get into trouble here with that explosion, and that could be Caleb who is indeed wounded. In this shot, we do have a look at a new character coming this season who is being closely guarded with regards to her role, but she's being played by Ariana DeBose, I believe how you pronounce the second name. Maybe you could argue if these scenes are connected. I doubt they are, but maybe she's arriving as backup or a getaway for this part. But it could just, again, be the way the trailer is cut. We then see Bernard and Stubbs showing an image of the maze. It reminds me of like in history where you'd be given a seal to kind of grant passage, showing that you have the permission to go somewhere. So Bernard is just kind of flexing, look, I have the right of passage, I have the maze here, and it might get him to where he and Stubbs are trying to go. We get various other shots of Stubbs and Bernard, one in some kind of shopping area, one outside a diner, and I'm wondering if this is soon after Bernard wakes up from coming out of the Sublime / the Valley Beyond, but he gets into it with a couple of random humans, if you will. But speaking of the shopping area with Stubbs, this could be the same location in where it's the aftermath of Stubbs fighting that guy, but it seems as though Clementine is appearing in this location. Maybe she's being equipped by Halores to do her bidding, but that just seems a bit too easy of a shot in the dark there, so let me know if you have any ideas. We see Maeve taking out this guy on the floor here. My first thought was like, is that William? But it doesn't appear to be, but whoever it is, she seems to be going ham on. It's a very foresty looking location, so it's easy to assume, oh, is this another park? It might be, it might not be. We even get an insanely intriguing shot here where we see Maeve with Halloris. Like, this is Halloris. She's still got the burn to remind herself of that moment of last season. She optionally, don't forget, chose to not heal that up. And she's got a knife in hand, but she really does look devastated. And I'm wondering, because I feel like Maeve would go in for the kill here because it's Halloris and she's posing a big threat. What is Halloris got over her, or what is she saying that is making her hesitate? Is it something that could be threatening the Valley Beyond, as we see in that clip earlier in the trailer? Could it be threatening her daughter's life? That is usually the easiest way to control Maeve, as we know. But man, one of the final shots shows that Caleb, Aaron Paul's character, still is not, well, he's in for a very rough time because he's getting swarmed with flies. As usual, flies are a big thing in Westworld, as we were talking about earlier. As we kind of know, like, flies, as described before, have been like teeny tiny little robots, but have often been used as a larger symbolic meaning. Like with the whole end of episode 1 of season 1, we had Dolores swat the fly, even though hosts of whom weren't viewed as living things just wouldn't have the care to kind of do that if a fly landed on their face. So there was a bit of symbolic aspect shown there. But it feels as though, to me, that Halloris, I mean, could be completely wrong here, could be weaponizing flies. And this could be coming into the theories that we had much earlier on. Hell, for all I know, she could be wielding them to wipe out humans. As I said, perhaps she's actually killing people and replacing them with a skin suit but a host, thus making a natural city in the real world her own park, with just the humans that she's taken out so far. Now, this could come into play as well with what we were talking about earlier. Could be why Caleb was so confused and terrified when he probably thought he was in like a normal area, but everyone just stopped in that part of the trailer. Possibly here, he's about to be taken out, but maybe all the flies just get deactivated right in time. It does feel to me as though like these flies are being weaponized. Of course, you could say this is like a dreamscapey hallucination moment, but I do feel like the flies is going to be a method of Halloris's to some degree to achieve her means to an end. And also to further that theory of the flies, if that person earlier wasn't the new character, or like the new Teddy, if you will, likened to that of Dolores's new Christina, that person with the fly and them struggling in the car could be a human business person getting taken out, only to be replaced with the same looking person, but that of a host of Halloris's making. But everyone, I think that just has me about spent with Westworld theories for today. I know I've been rambling for a little while about it, but how can you not try and get in depth when it comes to Westworld? So if you're brand new here to the channel, I do definitely recommend subscribing for anything and everything brand new on Westworld, reviews, breakdowns, of course, when the season comes out. I would love, and I really do ask you to leave your own ideas down in the comments. Maybe have some genius new theory of yours. I would love to hear it. But like the video if you got this far. I'd really appreciate that, especially if you got this far. As always, links are in the description down below if you want to follow me a bit more. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow hosts and humans in the next video. Goodbye.